Smash like.
We're gonna go into the infinite. Like I said, we may
and beyond.
we may have to we may have to redo the middle part, but that's okay. So the into the infinite.
We're going towards the monolith, whatever it is. We don't know, and we don't see it for very long.
No, we don't.
We
and
transition.
We don't even see it. Like, does he enter? We don't see him enter the monolith.
You never see it. It's simply it's viewed from his perspective, but outside of the pod. And as we approach the monolith, there's suddenly a burst of light that emanates from the center of the screen and grows out. And then we begin to see all these colorful effects of the slit scan camera technology that if you were to show it to a youngster, they would assume it was early computer graphics. And
right, but it's
by
not.
God, that's absolutely what it looks like. It looks like you couldn't achieve these effects with anything other than advanced computer graphics. But nope, it's old-fashioned analog, using some clever trickery.
Sure, like taking the camera and going like this.
Yeah, that does happen.
So that Bowman looks like he's
shaking.
encountering massive gravitational forces
or something. And again, this is where
I'm assuming like a black hole. I'm assuming like an event, like not the, what I mean? Like he's being, there's something going on that's extraordinary.
There's something extraordinary, and we really don't see. We see Bowman in the shaking. Okay, so and he's squinting. So there's feels to him like there's some kind of physical trauma.
So we're having that's done, and it's done in regular camera, like it's done in regular motion. We're able to be a test pilot. We're able to like he's priming us, right?
Yep.
So I think that Kubrick is taking us from this sterile, this more cerebral scene with the syzygy and the tumbling, monolith and the beautiful thing. And now he's like, okay, I'm going to make you feel something.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. This isn't the quiet desolation of space anymore.
No.
We're going somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's violent and it's active.
Kubrick's reaching his hand out and he's like, wake up.
Right. Because I'm going to show you some real stuff.
You wait till you see this.
Yeah, exactly.
This is all the tricks that he had up his sleeve 10 years before this movie was made. Well, many of them.
Right. And it's interesting that you bring that up. I hadn't thought about it at all, but there has to be a distinct break between all of the journey of discovery up to this point, which is that quiet, you're in space, it's silent. There has to be a way to shake you out of that, to prep you for now you're into the real psychological portion of the movie. There has to be a transition to that part.
He does it visually, but he also does it with the music as well. So the music is the Ligeti music.
Yes.
When we're looking at the crazy, not the beauty, of the Jovian system. But then the music like kind of it changes. It's subdued. I think it's just really sound. And then there's music. There's more Ligeti music, but it's different.
That's right. There's a combination of sound like rumbling.
Yes.
And then there's a transition back to that Ligeti music.
Right.
So we see I'm trying to remember which comes first. There's the First we see what look like stars being formed, galaxies.
Well, I disagree. I think first we see streaks. So we see the split.
Oh, you're right.
Right.
Yes.
And on one side we see a certain pattern of streaks, and on the other side we see a different pattern of streaks, red and green. I forget which way it starts, but we see that, and it's like, so for me, obviously there's the sense of motion, right? Mm-hmm. So you're traveling, but you're also, it seems like traveling at very, very high speed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I'm getting from that.
Now imagine seeing these effects in 1968.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I tell you, they hold up now.
Yeah.
They hold up now. And before I had read the making of how did they get these effects, I remember staring at it just a few years ago thinking, how the hell did they do this?
Well,
So in particular, the after we go through some of the colored streaks, which look like computer animation, then we go into that what looks like stars being born or galaxies forming, something unknown but clearly cosmic. Are we looking back in time? Who knows?
right.
And I remember looking at those effects again, thinking, how was that achieved? Now that I know how it was, it's like I'm any magic trick. When you know how the magic trick is done, you're like, oh, of course, it's obvious.
Well, don't
Right?
tell me, because
But I'm not. I won't tell you. I
Yeah.
won't tell you. But it's still very cool. I mean, even if you know how, it's still very cool.
Well, I just kind of came up with this kind of progression of these images and an interpretation of them, and I kind of want to let that kind of oil in my mind for a couple months, because I don't know that I ever dissected it as much as this, just because we were going to do this video. I actually like sat there and went like, well, wait a minute. This looks like a scene from Koyaanisqatsi. This looks like technology taken from an aerial view. At least that's what those first streaks, the split screen streaks, seem like to me. And then the shapes start to become a little more organic. They look like bubbly, like kind of like swirls of color, like you would take a paint in a glycerin or something, like, and swirl it around.
You're not far. You're not far off. How
Close,
it is done.
huh? Yeah. Did you ever see the test where they've done that, where they'll take a cylinder and they'll put paint drops in it? And this is to talk about organization chaos theory. And they'll stir it like 4 times this way, and it's completely swirled. And then they'll stir it 4 times back, and the droplets look almost the same as they were originally.
Yeah, I think I've
really
seen that.
That has more to do with like fluid mediums. I think it has to do with anything that any esoteric is trying to prove by that, but it's just a really neat experiment.
Totally.
Yeah. And then and as he's going through, instead of the shaky rumbly,
now it's still shots. Yeah.
And he's like turning away from it, but he can't take his eyes off it. It's like, it's terrifying, but I still have to look at it, because
but exactly. But not only that, it's so much more effective. Those brief, almost subliminal still shots are so much more effective at convincing you that he's seeing something that is just shredding his sanity. He's seeing things that are incomprehensible. And he could have, a lesser director would have had him, I don't know, sitting in a sound studio going, ah, and screaming, or things like that. Right. Again, but because there's no motion and it's still shot, psychologically, it's much more powerful than showing a regular full motion actor screaming in a helmet.
You sounded a little like Daffy Duck when you did that. I love that. And I've never been so insulted in all my life.
Duck Dodgers in the 23rd and a half century.
I love that one. Yeah.
And then it just goes to the blinking eye.
Well, smash like. The blinking eye, right? Okay. So the blinking eye, I mean, that's how we still know it's Dave.
Yes.
He's still having a human experience.
Yes, I completely agree.
And that's to ground us, because we're not seeing those flashes of him anymore.
Right.
Now it's something else. He's experiencing something beyond the material realm at this point, right? His humanity's still there, but it's more about the consciousness. You can't show a brain, because that would be icky and wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Totally. It's like so much else in the movie. It's all taking place here in the viewer's mind.
Yeah. And it's us too. It's us looking back at ourselves. And it's back to Blade Runner. I mean, like the imagery of the eye, and the idea of the window of the soul, and you can go into all that kind of imagery as well.
I mean, anytime you put a single eye on a 70 millimeter CinemaScope theater screen, it's extremely powerful. I just want to mention a piece about the aliens that he struggled with this, because again, in consulting with experts, they basically said, that there's other life that might be out there would be life, but not in a way that would necessarily be recognizable to us as life.
Right.
It wouldn't look like anything that you could conceive of, or most likely would not. So he struggled with trying to, he gave art directors or the artists an impossible directive. Look like something that, draw me something that has never existed in a color that doesn't exist. Right.
Oh,
So, what do you do with that? And I saw some of the sketches and they are way out there. I
yeah.
mean, way out there.
I guess Geiger wasn't one of them.
And even Geiger is not close to some of these drawings. They're just, they look like creatures, but not in any conventional sense. So I thought they really hit the mark if you're trying to go for what an exomorph might really look like. But in the end, he decided, like so many.
What? An exomorph?
Yeah, exomorph.
Another bug hunt.
He decided that none of these efforts were sufficiently weird enough, and that the best thing to do is to not show them at all, which is in the end why we don't see the aliens, which clearly now was the right move. Or do we? Yeah, that's a good question.
So let's keep going. So we're going. So we're doing the landscape. Well, we're not the landscape. So we're doing okay. So we get the elliptical galaxy.
Yes.
Right. That.
Yeah.
That star thing you were talking about, that exploding star. I mean, that looks like computer graphics.
Uh-huh.
How do you do that one? I want to know that.
I don't know. I mean, there are some effects. I don't recall reading exactly how they were done.
So that could be. I know, like when they did like Deep Space Nine, they were doing. Babylon 5 was doing special effects at the same time. DS9 was doing exploding spaceship models, and they were still doing the practical effects, and it was still costing them 3 times as much to do it. But that was just the way they did it. And what they did was, in order to simulate zero gravity explosions, they would have the camera on the ground and they would explode it above. So you would have a radial explosion, and then the stuff would fall down. So maybe that's a shower of sparks coming down on a camera lens. I have no idea, but it's that effect could be made. I was just curious how he did it, but if you don't know, that's fine.
That one I don't know.
Yeah.
I actually suspect that's another paint and emulsion trick.
Oh.
Transparent liquids, colored, that are
that's
lit,
just black and white at that point. I think.
That are lit. Yeah. So some of those other ones though are colored fluids that are lit by super high intensity lamps. Yeah.
So that to me, okay. Now I'm going to start getting little. Let's read into this stuff. So that to me is the elliptical galaxy, right? That's the universe showing itself off, right? That's like, okay, now we're going to show you something. Look how cool the universe is. Look at me. I'm the universe. Boom. I can do this.
You've never seen this before.
The perfect spherical pattern of stars, brilliant white, the whitest white you could see. Look at this. And then they start to get more, I use the word inchoate, right? They get more like primeval, like forms like almost like a jellyfish. One of it reminds me of like a jelly, like a sea jelly.
Yes.
Maybe not with the tendrils.
There's some long tendrils that come off. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the further back, it's almost like you're going further back into the beginning of the universe, and the formations are becoming more like primitive, less organized, until finally there's one that almost it's towards the top of the screen, and it's kind of reddish in color. It's almost like whenever you see pictures of like a fetus in the womb.
Yeah.
It has that like kind of blood color to it. Which I it's like the lifeblood of the universe. To quote, well, I just watched Big Trouble in Little China, so that's a line in Big Trouble in Little China, where he's like, "What's that? Lifeblood of the universe. What's that?" And then there's one actually at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. It almost looks like a spermatozoa. It's like did you get that? It's like a white blob, and it's a very short tail, but it was almost, to me, it was almost
I got that.
You got the sense of birth, right?
I got that. Yep.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one. All right. So, all right, cool. And then I see other ones that are shaped like mouths and eyes.
Yeah.
But then we get to the aliens.
Yep. Well, we go over some landscapes, which suggest
So-
that he's reaching his destination.
So to me, right before the landscapes, there's the 7 diamonds, right?
Yes. Yeah,
So
that's kind of one of the most mysterious parts of the whole thing for me.
Those are the aliens to me.
I think that's possible.
They're in organized form.
Yep.
They're changing, they're pulsing. They're they're changing patterns inside of their pattern. They're flying in an organized formation. They're like, like UFO kind of sighting kind of stuff. But they're flying with him past the landscape, almost as if they're guiding the pod with that. This is totally my interpretation. I have no idea.
Yeah, but I don't think that's an unreasonable interpretation.
Because there's 7 of them equally distanced, almost like flying in a V formation. I
but
don't know.
not only that, they're geometric objects in a landscape that up to this point has been nothing but largely abstract patterns.
Yeah, or stellar patterns, like things the
patterns.
universe would create. But this looks like something created by an intelligence to me.
Yeah. I think that's entirely possible, because that sequence with the diamonds is probably always been one of the most baffling ones.
It's the one that stands out from the other ones, because the other ones are landscapes and starscapes, right?
Yeah.
And emulsions, artistic.
Yeah, I don't know how they achieved the diamond effect, but it doesn't. I like it. I mean, so either interpretation, neither one bothers me. To say that, well, this is just some other weird phenomenon he was observing, or that this is manifestation of the alien presence which has brought him here. Both of those work perfectly fine for me.
Smash like. This is, because I'm thinking benevolent, superior, civilization.
They seem to be benevolent. They're very patient. They may have allowed proto-humans to survive from the very beginning, because again, the implication is that those primitive beings might have been on their way out because they would have been outcompeted.
Yeah, the leopards would have got them, or
right.
Yeah, exactly. The tapirs would have ate the last of their food.
And that brings us to the hotel room. Well, I won't even say hotel room, bedroom suite. And as you astutely pointed out, when he arrives, we don't immediately see him. We see his perspective from inside the pod looking out. The pod is still there because the screens are now registering malfunction.
Non-function. And then
so there's still a tie back to the reality that we came from.
The
briefly.
Transition, the cinematic transition to that moment too, is from the psychedelic thing that we just saw to back to the more traditional like prop. Is his eye again. It's the psychedelic color, and then the colors bleed out to a realistic looking eye, right? So it's actually like Kira Delia's eye, I assume. Because he does have pretty striking, like grayish,
super striking
blue eyes.
Yeah, they really stick out.
It makes you wonder if he was cast for that. Like if that was a contributing factor in the fact that he was cast for that role.
I don't know why he was. I don't know why he was cast. I don't know.
I don't.
He was just coming off of a movie that I only saw maybe 3 or 4 years ago. What Happened to Bunny something? I can't remember the last name of the character. It's a good movie. You should check it out. It's a whodunit. Laurence Olivier is the detective.
Olivier.
And Keir Dullea is a suspect. He talks a lot more than he does in this movie, and it kept me guessing. Because Bunny, I can't remember what the last name is, the eponymous subject, has disappeared very inexplicably. Where has she gone? Check it out. It's black and white.
Funny you say Bunny, because I have in my notes here that Bowman is like a scared rabbit being taken to the vet.
That's
He's,
yeah, right.
he's
He's out of
sitting
his
in that
element.
pod and he doesn't know what to do next. And he's just like, oh my God, what
What
just
can you do?
happened? Right?
He has no idea. He's not even really himself anymore.
No. Well,
He's
he's
changed.
traumatized.
He's traumatized for sure. And interestingly, and I think this is an interesting choice by Kubrick, that when he emerges from the pod, and for one scene, the pod is still there. And then the next scene, the pod is gone.
Yes.
But you see that Bowman has aged inside that helmet. How long did the journey take? Did the journey take years in his time? Did it take as long as it took in the movie, seconds? And that the journey is so hard on the human body that it caused that kind of aging? We don't know.
So I think we're led to believe through some indications of Bowman's the human aging process, if you want to call it that, that time is not operating at the same.
Right.
You know, it's just time is either immaterial here or it's just off.
So you have he first examines the bathroom, which I don't even remember seeing before in previous viewings. So I'm sure it's always been there. It just didn't register with me.
Same.
But the bedroom is the more iconic scene. So that's the one that I guess stuck with me. But he first looks at the bathroom, and then, as you mentioned earlier, he hears something or senses something behind him in the main bedroom, and he slowly turns around. Now, after having been through this traumatic experience led by what we assume is an alien intelligence, what's behind him? And he turns so slowly, and there's no noise. Everything is dead silent. There's no music this time, nothing. So it's that psychological terror of what's in the room with me. And he turns around, and of course he sees himself, but an older version of himself, even older than he was coming out of the portal. But he's in a smoking jacket or a bathrobe, having a leisurely meal, lunch or dinner. What does this all mean? What's happening? What's going on here?
So they don't make eye contact. He doesn't make eye contact with himself, right? So he's in the spacesuit and he sees the back of his head.
He sees himself eating,
yeah.
But they never look at each other.
Right. And then the man at the table, the Bowman at the table in the smoking jacket, senses something.
Right.
You see the back of his head, and he kind of goes,
yeah. Yeah.
And then he looks and there's nothing there, but he gets up out of his chair to investigate.
And it's this kind of brilliant way of, again, how should I say it? Kubrick's keeping you off balance, keeping you completely confused as to what's happening here. You don't know what to make of it. I mean, when you're watching the movie in real time, you have no clue. It's only later when you come out that you're like, you got to think about it, or you got to watch it again, or you got to watch it again and again, or you got to read somebody else's interpretation in the magazine as to what happened.
Yeah.
So is the hotel room a zoo? Is he being kept there in what the alien intelligence assumes is an environment that is a natural environment for his species?
Right.
Is it in his mind? Is the room not physically real, but it's something that's happening in his mind? How much time is elapsing between the time that one version of himself looks at another version? Is it real time, or is a lot of time? Is he living out is he like Picard in that great episode of TNG where he lives an entire other existence?
The inner light.
Yeah, the inner light. Is it like that? We really can't be sure. We don't know. It's not really important. But one of those things is happening.
It's a dreamscape. So, I don't know if I actually was talking about a lot of this stuff today. Was talking about the idea of the human zoo as a possible explanation for the Fermi paradox. The idea of like lucid dreaming, which I experimented with a couple times, and not even like intention, but like just do you ever like eat too much pasta, lay down on the couch and just have one of those like great naps? And you're like, you got the radio on or a television on.
Oh yeah, I've
and
had
you
them.
fall asleep, but you're lightly dreaming.
Yep.
And you have a dream that lasts a week in the dream, but you're on the same track of the song when you wake up.
You
I have
disorient.
no way to explain how that happens, but that's what's
It's altered
going
consciousness.
that's what's going on in this scene to me.
I think that's a good interpretation.
And when he turns to investigate where he just was, the earlier version of the spacesuit, it's almost like an echo of a psychic echo of the past.
Right.
So we're getting a sense of time. We're getting a sense of distorted time. Not human.
What a brilliant scene. A scene that when I first saw it, I came out thinking, I don't know what the hell that was. What really? I came out thinking, what is the meaning of the white hotel room? But now, it's 30 plus years since the first time I saw it, and I've seen it, many, many times since then. Now it all seems pretty straightforward. But what he did was he basically tackled the problem of, how do I show what a dream is like? And the example you just gave is perfect. I mean, he's literally showing you what a version of a dream is like in this mind-bending location after you've just been transported either backwards in time, forwards in time, across the universe,
timeless
area where time has no meaning. Any of these things are a possibility.
We don't know what's going
on. You've been converted to pure energy. You exist only as thought.
Right.
Any of these possibilities exist.
Smash like. I want to get in a little bit of the symbolism before we.
Well, you mentioned the breaking of the glass.
Yeah,
so that's how Kubrick makes the transition from middle-aged Bowman to the really elderly Bowman. He knocks over the glass
because of his clumsiness.
I don't know. What do you think?
I wasn't thinking about that. That's really great. Well, first I wanted to say something about shapes. So we've been talking about the obelisk. We've been talking about rectangular shapes. Rectangular shapes meaning like either the alien intelligence mostly, or artificial intelligence. In the case of Hal's kind of both, right? So like Hal is the rectangle, but he's also the circle.
He's also a circle, yeah.
So the circle implies an eye, right?
Oh, very strongly.
And of course, we see Bowman's eye when we're going through the Stargate, right? And on the table, this may be a stretch, but that's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for.
On the table, the serving trays are rectangular with lids, but the plate is round. And it's like, to me, the round is the human symbol, right? And the rectangle is the alien symbol. So it's like the aliens are providing him with food. He takes it presumably from those trays, puts it on his round plate, and then it becomes. I mean, I know I'm really reaching here, but I don't think that there's a misplaced object in that room. I think that Kubrick put every single object in that room for a purpose.
I tend to agree with you only because everything else that he did was so deliberate. Nothing in any shot that he did appears to be casual. And people that worked with him on this film talk about this a lot, that it's often turned into a cartoonish version of him that he was obsessive.
Right.
No, he was
deliberate.
The way they describe it is that he was not obsessive. It's that he knew what he wanted.
Yeah.
And he wanted his people to deliver exactly what he asked for.
I admire that.
Right. So that supports your idea that in a scene, particularly a scene that is as sparsely populated with objects as the end room scene is, I would have to imagine that everything was considered, not placed randomly, not chosen randomly.
Well, those chairs look really darn comfortable, I have to tell you. I don't have a chair like that in my house. Yeah. The bed looks really comfortable too.
The bed does look pretty comfortable, although it's a bit large for my taste.
The food looks really good, right? Like it's like a full plate of food that he's tucking into there, man.
Yes.
Like he is having a meal, right?
Yes.
What?
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a different memory of that end sequence. So he's eating as the middle stage Bowman in the jacket.
Yeah.
I feel like I remember one where he was really elderly, hairless, in the white suit, eating soup. Am I misremembering that? Or maybe that was in 2010. I don't know.
No, I don't think that's in 2010, but you've just sparked maybe a false memory. And like maybe now I'm inserting a memory that I
It could
didn't
be a
have
false
before.
memory, but the thing is that
I like that.
he cut 15 or 20 minutes out after the first showing.
Maybe we saw it in a different version, or
And
maybe
I'm just wondering.
cutscenes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's possible that I've seen an alternate version.
I'll have to go
Everybody says there is no such thing as a director's cut of 2001, because when he shortened it, it was because he wanted to shorten it, because when he finally saw it with the audience, he realized there were certain sequences that just lasted too long.
Yeah, and he had to put an intermission in anyway because it was already 2.5 hours long.
Right.
How much longer could it be? The scene with the broken glass.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, we're talking Christ imagery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this his last supper, right? I mean, it's his last meal.
Oh,
it's his last meal.
That's an interesting, his last meal. Yeah.
I mean, is he a condemned man, or is it just his last like sensual pleasure of eating before he becomes transformed into an other world?
Is it his last worldly act?
You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
Because
I mean, he's ingesting.
Obviously, he doesn't have a
food.
companion, so he can't have sex. But like, he's
ingesting food. It's a pleasurable sensation. He's got a good meal, as you observed. It could be like the Matrix, where it's like he's imagining he's having this meal. He's not physically really having it.
I love that.
And the idea that this is an imagination or a dream, it's not actually happening, also very likely. I love that idea, the Last Supper.
So, but that's not all. So he breaks the glass, right?
Yeah.
So it's not the only glass on the table, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it never is. You got to have a water glass and a wine glass.
So which one does he break?
Yeah, that I didn't notice.
I did.
Wine.
Yeah.
Is it the wine?
You know how I know? All right. So here's how I know. Now, I don't know. Maybe you can tell by the placement of the glasses. I'm not that,
Yeah,
I don't
I'd have to look
eat
it
with
up.
my pinky extended, so I don't know these things.
I try not to.
But at one point he's eating and he takes the glass and he drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks at it.
He does. He regards it.
Almost admiring it. Like,
yes. Yep.
That's a really good glass of wine.
Yeah.
And puts it down. Because you don't do that with water. I mean, nowadays you might do it with water.
Nah. That's a great
nowadays
point.
You might go, well, that's Aquafina, but I really prefer San Pellegrino.
I always get tap water at the table. Thank you.
But that's a wine.
You're right. I remember, since I just watched it last night, you're right. He takes a moment and he looks at it and he does admire it.
Yeah.
So you're right. That is the wine glass.
So it's the wine glass.
That is Christ imagery.
He knocks it over, it breaks.
Yeah.
Right. So we all know what wine in the sacrament is Christ's blood, right?
Yes,
yes. So he spills the blood, right?
Yeah.
And he is about to expire from his mortal existence and become something else, semi-divine, right? Yes. So for me, that's the Christ imagery for me in the scene. Smash like.
That's a really cool, because really, why introduce the idea of eating into that entire sequence? It's an odd choice, because you could have had the entire room sequence without any kind of eating.
So I think there's a couple things going on here. It is, you have to espouse my theory that they're benevolent aliens, and they are taking care of him. So they've given him very silk jackets, slippers.
Yeah, I always took that to mean
furniture, wonderful bed.
As far as they can tell, from either observing humans or being able to extract something from his memory,
which is what I'm thinking.
That they're like, this is what a human most wants. This would
Let's
be a
give this
great,
kid the best.
yeah, it's be a great environment. He'll love it.
Let's make him the best bed. We'll get him the best dog bed. We'll give him a little chew toy. We'll give him like the best. We'll feed him Calcan instead of that dry stuff. I don't even know if they make Calcan anymore. But we'll really pamper this guy. It's his last day before we make him the progenitor of the next version of his species.
Yeah, this all makes complete sense to me. One small detail that I don't know is it's particularly meaningful at all. It might have just been a particular bent that he was interested in at the time. Do you notice how on the space station the ceiling is completely illuminated when they're walking through the curved part, but in the end sequence room the floor is illuminated in pretty much exactly the same way?
No. I noticed the floor was illuminated, but I did not notice the ceiling in contrast to that.
Oh, in the space station, when he's walking through the corridor, he encounters the Russians. All of the lighting is 100% of the ceiling is illuminated in exactly the same way that the floor of the room in the end sequence is.
That is awesome.
So lighting from above versus lighting from below. So, I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing that Kubrick chose to light the floor in that sequence rather than the ceiling.
Why?
Why would you do that?
I love the idea of lighting the floor. I just thought it was beautiful.
It's so counterintuitive and it's a big pain in the ass.
What is it?
To have the stage people construct a set that's going to be illuminated from below.
Yeah.
Is a bit of an ordeal. So it's something that he really wanted it for a reason. Was it just to make it seem other? Weird? To further drive in that sense of dreamlike state?
I mean, I could go out on a limb here. Go
there.
So the lighting, well, it could be very basic. It could be a motion it could be a symbolized motion. So man is here, the light is here.
Mm-hmm.
Now man has risen above. So he's becoming something else. It's an
Mm-hmm.
ascension, maybe in a symbolic way.
I love it.
Just throwing it out there, like heaven, he's below heaven, now he's above heaven. I don't know. I mean, I'm throwing that's
again,
awesome.
it's the beauty of that sequence is that there are many possible.
I never noticed that. That's wonderful. But one thing that you reminded me going back to the space station is that when Dr. Floyd goes through customs and he talks to the computer for the first time we ever see him interacting with the computer or anybody interacting with a computer in this movie, the computer asks him to state his name, his nationality, and something
Christian name and surname.
Nice.
Yeah.
And they use the word Christian.
Yes. And the reason I know that is that it really stuck out to me.
Wow.
Because I think that if you said to a lot of people today, what's your Christian name, they wouldn't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty wild. That passed me right up. Mm-hmm. But he actually says thank you to the computer.
He does.
Did you notice that?
Yeah.
So it's our humanity reflected on this device.
And I took that to be that we so reflexively say certain things as part of a trivial politeness,
right? That
it's just something that happened that he didn't even think twice about.
Exactly, and that's the point. I think is that it's part of our nature to have these niceties, to have this courtcy.
Yeah, and it's another one of these meaningless interactions that almost all the characters have.
Yeah, and it's a contrast to what happens with Hal later,
Right.
So
then he reaches his final stage. He's clearly on the literal deathbed, and the monolith appears once more.
Yeah.
The monolith is the consistent thread from the beginning of the movie all the way to the very end.
The monolith's the main character, I guess.
The monolith, in some ways, the monolith is the main character that has no speaking lines.
Well, it does. It's
yeah. But it's so funny now that we've talked this all through, and because I've seen the movie so many times now, that the end scene just seems very obvious. And when I first saw it, it was totally baffling to me. I mean, it's like I almost wrote off the whole end of the movie because, like, I don't know what that was. That was just weirdness. And now,
Yeah.
after having watched it so many times and talked about it, I'm like, yeah, it's obvious. It's very clear what's happening. You know, the only thing we're really debating are some possibilities around the edges.
Right.
You know.
No, I agree. But see, we've watched it. Remember what you said about listening to a song over and over? You got the juice out of it.
Yeah.
We got the juice. I got the juice out of this movie. And you did too. And it's because I was at breakfast with a friend Saturday, and I told him, I said, he said, "What are your plans for this week?" I said, "Oh, I'm gonna be talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey." And I said, "What a great job I have." And he's like, yeah. He's like, "Tell me about that." He's like, "What happens at the end?"
Yeah.
And I just basically gave the version, like, well, you know, he
Reader's Digest version.
Transferred in, you know, he's transformed into the Star Child, and he becomes a
next form of life.
Yeah, what does that mean? I'm like, well, it's the future of humanity. He's like the first of the ascension into another you know, life form or a version of ourselves. And he's like, oh, yeah, I guess I never thought of it that way before.
Yeah.
What do you mean? That's what it is. No, I'm just kidding. You know what I mean? Like, it's just,
well,
it seems so obvious now, but
there's still something interesting about the very end when the Star Child appears. He seems to be back on Earth. So I'm also very interested in the fact that they really went out of their way to make a fetus that looked like the actor.
Yeah.
It looks, I mean, the eyes are unmistakable. They did a great job. If he had ever existed as a very advanced fetus, he would have looked just like that. But he's back on Earth. So he's not simply going to exist as the next form of humanity. He's taking it back to Earth.
Yeah, what's he gonna do?
I don't know.
So
but do you agree he's back over, he's at least looking over Earth?
Absolutely. I mean, that is
I don't know what
supposed to be Earth.
We don't know what his intentions are.
I don't see any continents, but it's blue and white, and it's meant to be Earth, in my opinion.
I think so too.
I don't think it's meant to be an Earth-like non-Earth. I think it's Earth.
And I think that is the most ambiguous part of the entire film. That's the part where I don't even think Kubrick had an idea. I think he's just like, we're gonna show him in the next stage of what humanity is to become, and that's all I know.
Oh man, I mean, if you want to go with the Christ imagery, you could go like, you know, second coming. You could talk about you know, he's going to reign over the earth. I mean, you get into like some really like theological stuff if you wanted to, but I agree it's not there. I think I think that's intentionally left ambiguous. But I believe it's the innocence in the expression on the child's face means that it's going to be a really good thing.